The dark bay gelding tore the hitch rail loose before anyone in the Alamosa livery yard understood he had already warned them twice. The first warning had been the white around his eye when the saddle blanket touched his back. The second had been the way he planted his right forefoot and twisted away from the cinch. The stable hand answered both with a raised whip. The horse lunged. Wood cracked. One end of the rail struck the dirt, and 3 tied horses pulled back in a storm of rope, iron, and frightened breath. Men shouted for knives. Someone yelled to shoot the bay before he killed a customer. Owen Maddox stepped between the whip and the horse. He did not grab the reins. He did not raise his voice. Put it down. The stable hand stared at him. The horse, the whip. The gelding stood with the broken rail dragging from his lead rope, head high, nostrils red inside. Owen turned one shoulder toward him instead of facing him square. His hands stayed low and open. "Easy," he said. "Nobody's climbing on you now." The horse's ears moved, one toward Owen, one toward the men crowding the yard. Harriet Lyle stopped just inside the gate with her gloved hand still on the latch. She had come to Alamosa to pay interest at the bank, buy lamp oil, and ask whether any freight buyer would inspect 3 Kestrel, draw mares before the first hard frost. She had not come to spend money on a ruined gelding. Then the bay shifted his weight, and she saw the white hair along his left heel, not a stocking, a narrow broken line, as though a brush had been dragged once through dark paint. Her attention moved higher. Beneath his jaw, half hidden by the red rawhide halter, lay a pale crescent scar. Harriet forgot the shouting. "Turn him a little," she said. No one listened. Owen did. He did not touch the horse. He changed his own position, leaving the bay an open path away from the crowd. The gelding followed that opening by one cautious step. His left hip came into view. A blackened brand sat there, uneven and too wide. Beneath it, older lines pressed faintly through the scarred hide. Harriet moved closer. "Ma'am, stay back," the stable hand said. "He's mean. He's hurting." "You can tell that from the road. I can tell from the way he braces before anyone touches his back." Owen glanced at her then. Not long, long enough to register that she had noticed what he had. Harriet studied the overburn. The newer iron had been run across the older mark instead of beside it. Bad work if the purpose was lawful transfer. Effective work if the purpose was confusion. The bay moved again, and his right forehoof struck the ground with a small, guarded hesitation. A crack ran up from the outer edge. "How long has he been here?" Harriet asked. The livery owner came out from the office, wiping ink from his thumb. 2 weeks. "A trader's man. Name? Used one. Dob. Used one? That's what I said." The owner nodded toward a square paper tag tied to the halter. $50. "I'd take 40 before he tears down the rest of my yard." A few men laughed. Harriet did not. She walked closer until Owen raised one hand without looking away from the gelding. The gesture did not command her to stop. It marked the distance at which the horse might strike. Harriet stopped on her own. Owen lowered his hand. "He may come forward," he said. "He won't if they keep crowding him." Harriet turned to the men. "Back away." One of them smirked. "Your horse now, Miss Lyle?" "Not yet." Her answer carried enough authority that 2 men moved. The others followed when Owen said nothing, and simply waited. The bay's breathing eased. Harriet gave a low 2-note whistle before she could reconsider it. The sound rose, then fell. The gelding's head came around. His attention fixed on her so sharply that the yard seemed to contract around the space between them. Harriet's fingers curled inside her glove. Her father had used that whistle for one dark bay colt 11 years earlier. a colt with a crescent scar beneath the jaw after catching himself on a broken gate hinge. A colt entered in the Kestrel Draw breeding book as KD 14. Banner. The horse took one step toward her, then another. Owen watched the movement, but he did not ask what it meant. "I'll take him," Harriet said. The livery owner blinked. At 50. At 50. Miss Lyle, one of the buyers near the wall, said, "That horse is half lame and twice dangerous." "Then it is. Fortunate I am buying him, not you." Harriet untied the small purse beneath her coat. Inside lay $100. Every bill had already been assigned to the bank before she entered town. She counted out 50 anyway, once, then again. The livery owner accepted the money before caution could improve him. Owen's gaze dropped to the remaining bills in her hand. He noticed she counted those too. Harriet folded them back into the purse. "You know horses," she said to him. "Some. You knew not to fight him. That's less knowledge than it ought to be. I need him taken 14 miles to Kestrel Draw without anyone proving how brave they are on his back." Owen glanced at the cracked hoof, the sore back, and the dragging hitch rail. He should walk most of it, then walk him. "I haven't agreed to work for you." The answer was plain, not insolent. Harriet looked at the tag still tied to the red halter, then at the last $50 in her purse. Men were watching. Some expected her to retreat. Others expected her to turn authority into humiliation. She chose neither. "This horse is $50, she said. "I'll pay double if the cowboy comes with him." Laughter broke around the yard. Owen did not smile. "Ma'am, I don't come with horses." Heat climbed Harriet's neck. The mistake landed as soon as she heard her own words spoken back to her. She could defend the joke and lose the man, or correct it. "You're right," she said. The laughter thinned. $50 bought the horse. The other 50 is an advance for 5 weeks' wages, if you accept. Bunkhouse, meals, and no claim on your person beyond the work written between us. You may refuse now. You may leave later for cause. No one strikes that horse. You advise me when his safety is concerned. I decide what happens on my ranch." Owen studied her with the stillness he had given Banner. "And if I tell you a thing will cripple him?" "You tell me plainly, and if you don't like the answer, I can dislike it without pretending I didn't hear it." The corner of his mouth moved, almost, but not quite a smile. "Write the terms?" "I intend to. Then I'll read them before I take your money." Harriet nodded. "Fair." A polished boot sounded on the boardwalk outside the livery office. Graham Pritchard stepped into the yard in a dark coat too fine for the dust. His gaze found Banner, then Harriet, then Owen. He recovered quickly. Not quickly enough. "Miss Lyle," he said, "you've bought yourself trouble." Harriet had not yet spoken Banner's name. She had not mentioned the old brand or the breeding book. "Have I?" Pritchard's expression settled into concern. "That horse never belonged to Kestrel Draw." The yard went still in pieces rather than all at once. A dropped buckle stopped ringing. A man near the wall lowered his coffee cup. Owen's eyes moved from Pritchard to Harriet. Harriet closed her purse around the last $50. "That is interesting," she said. "I had not told anyone I thought he did." Pritchard's mistake did not make him retreat. It made him smoother. "You are standing beside a branded animal with a half-burned mark," he said. "Any rancher in the valley might wonder where it came from." Harriet held his gaze. "You did not say I wondered. You said the horse never belonged to Kestrel Draw." The livery yard had gone watchful. Owen remained beside Banner, one hand resting near the loose lead without closing around it. Pritchard glanced at him. "Maddox has a gift for finding trouble that belongs to other men." "Does he?" Harriet asked. Ask him why he does not keep a position long. Owen's face did not change. Ask him why men leave yours. Pritchard's mouth hardened, then eased into a smile meant for the crowd. Miss Lyle, I am trying to spare you an expensive mistake. Sell the horse to me for what you paid. I will remove the nuisance before the sheriff starts asking how an altered brand reached your hands. Put your claim in writing. There is no claim. Then there is no reason for you to buy him. Pritchard looked past her toward the dark bay. Banner stood with the broken hitch rail, still tied to the red halter, his weight guarded over the cracked right hoof. You will regret confusing sentiment with ownership. Harriet folded her purse closed, and you may regret speaking before you knew what I intended to say. Pritchard tipped his hat without courtesy and left through the gate. Only after his footsteps faded did the livery owner breathe out. I'd prefer no sheriff in my yard. Then tell me who brought the horse, Harriet said. I told you. A fellow called himself Dobb. Did you know him? No. Would you know him again? The owner scratched at the ink stain on his thumb. Maybe. Pale scar across one eyebrow. Grey hat. Brown coat. Paid cash for 2 weeks' keep and said a buyer would come. Did he say which buyer? No. Did Mr. Pritchard see the horse before today? The owner hesitated too long. Not that I can swear. Harriet heard the boundary and accepted it. Write the description beside the sale entry. That is my book, and your liability if someone claims you sold stolen stock. He studied her, then went inside for his pen. Owen waited until the yard resumed its uneasy business. You often make enemies before noon? He asked. Only when they arrive early. Pritchard has money, riders, and buyers who prefer his favor. I have a horse he wants, and a question he answered before I asked. That is not the same as proof. No. Harriet looked at Banner, but it is enough reason to keep looking. The livery office smelled of dust, leather, and old coffee. Harriet used a sheet of ruled paper from the owner's desk and wrote the terms herself. 5 weeks, beginning September 17th, 1888. $50 paid in advance. Bunkhouse lodging and meals included. Work to include Banner's recovery, stable duties, and ranch tasks agreed upon by both parties. No horse at Kestrel draw to be struck, spurred in anger, or forced through visible pain. Either party might end the agreement for cause. Earned wages remained owed even if the agreement ended. Owen read each line without hurry. Add that I advise on Banner's physical limits, he said. You already have the right to advise. Write it, Harriet did, and that I am required to tell you plainly if I believe an order will cripple him. Required, so silence cannot pass for obedience. The wording caught her attention. You have experience with that? With men who prefer agreement to warning. That was not my question. It is the answer I have today. Harriet disliked the evasion, but she wrote the clause. Then she added, Final decisions regarding Kestrel. Draw property remain Harriet Lyle's. Owen tapped that line with one finger. If you decide against my warning, I hear the warning. I decide the ranch matter. And if the ranch matter is his body, Harriet met his eyes, then I will not ask you to help me injure him. He read the sentence again, as if testing whether it would hold under pressure. Fair enough. They signed in front of the livery owner, who signed as witness. Harriet counted out the remaining $50 and placed it on the desk. Owen did not touch it until the owner had written paid in advance beneath the signatures. Then he folded the bills once and put them in an outer pocket. Visible, the saddle that had been used on Banner was tied behind Harriet's sorrel rather than placed on the gelding. Owen cut the broken hitch rail free and left Banner, in the red halter for the road, they departed Alamosa after midday. The San Luis Valley lay broad beneath a thin September sky, the mountains distant enough to look harmless. Banner traveled slowly. Owen walked beside his left shoulder, shortening the lead only when the horse stumbled on uneven ground. Harriet rode ahead where the road narrowed, then dismounted near the irrigation ditch 7 miles out. "Soft edge is better," Owen said. "I know. Then why are you taking the bank?" "Because the road drops too hard on the other side." He glanced at the ditch, then at her. "I was asking, not correcting." Harriet led Banner along the damp margin. The gelding placed his right forehoof more evenly there. At a washout, he hesitated. Owen reached for the lead at the same instant. Harriet shifted her grip. Their fingers met over the rope. His hand was warm and rough from reins. He released first. No apology, no assumption. Harriet passed him the lead deliberately. "Take him through. Your route." "My route." Owen stepped ahead, leaving Banner enough room to choose his footing. The gelding followed. 14 miles took nearly 5 hours. Kestrel Draw appeared near dusk. Ranch house low against the open valley. Bunkhouse west of the stable. Training corral beyond. And the enclosed spring lying north where cottonwoods darkened the draw. Owen inspected the end stall before bringing Banner inside. He checked the floor for nails, spread fresh straw, and hung the red halter on a peg within reach. After removing it, Banner lowered his head over the water bucket. Harriet untied the square $50 tag from the halter and carried it to the office. She placed it in the top desk drawer beside the livery bill of sale and their signed agreement. A bank envelope waited beneath the blotter. She had seen it that morning and left it unopened because she already knew what it contained. Now, she broke the seal. The Alamosa Bank would allow 35 days before taking further action on the overdue installment secured by Kestrel Draw. 35 days bought time. It did not buy feed, repairs, or a buyer willing to ignore Pritchard. Owen stood in the open office doorway. He did not enter. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad enough. You spent the money meant for that." It was not accusation. That made it harder to bear. "Yes, end the agreement. Keep whatever part of the advance I haven't earned." Harriet folded the notice. "No, you may need it. Then I should not have offered it. People change terms when facts change. This fact did not change. I knew the money was spoken for." Owen's jaw tightened. "That does not make the choice wise. No, it makes it mine." She placed the notice in the drawer beneath the agreement. "West Bunk is yours. The ranch house is private. Supper is at 6. If you prefer to cook for yourself, say so. The bunkhouse will do." At full dark, Harriet crossed the yard to check Banner once more. Owen sat on the bunkhouse porch with his bedroll beside him, instead of entering the assigned room. He had taken off his coat and laid it across his knees. From an inner pocket, he drew a folded page, torn rough along one edge. He studied it beneath the porch lantern, then lifted his gaze toward the stable where Banner stood. Harriet stopped before her boot reached the gravel. Owen folded the page and returned it to the coat. "You have seen that brand before," she said. He rose, slower than a guilty man, and more guarded than an innocent one. "I've seen work like it." "Where?" "On horses that changed hands too quickly. And that page? Not tonight." Harriet felt anger sharpen beneath her ribs. "Can't or won't." Owen picked up his coat. "Tonight there isn't enough difference." By sunrise, Harriet had decided Owen would either explain the page or prove he deserved to keep it hidden. He gave her neither satisfaction. When she crossed the yard, he was already in Banner's stall, standing near the gelding's shoulder, while a local farrier examined the cracked right forehoof. The farrier was a narrow man with grey in his beard and a habit of speaking to horses before people. He ran his thumb along the outer wall, then set the hoof down. The crack is deep enough to watch, not deep enough to panic over, he said. Doesn't reach living tissue. Light trim today, soft ground, no rider. Harriet leaned against the stall frame. How long? Depends how honestly he's been walking. The farrier glanced at Owen. And how honestly men have been riding him. Owen touched 2 fingers to the darkened hair over Banner's withers. The gelding flinched before contact. Back is sore from more than one bad day, Owen said. You can tell how long? Harriet asked. Not with certainty. Then don't give me certainty. I wasn't planning to. The farrier's mouth twitched. He trimmed only the loose edge and rasped the hoof smooth enough to keep it from catching. Banner trembled once when the leg was lifted, but Owen never trapped the knee or pulled. He waited for the horse to yield the weight. The farrier noticed. You worked livery horses, among others. He works better for you than for most. Owen lowered the hoof. He works better when no one argues with pain. Harriet heard the answer beneath the answer. Will you look at the brand? The farrier stepped to Banner's left hip. He studied the scarred lines from several angles, older iron underneath. Newer burn laid over it. How much newer? Harriet asked. Not yesterday, not 10 years. That is as close as I will swear. Owen's gaze rested on the overburn. Enough to hide the first mark? Enough to confuse a buyer who doesn't look twice. And a sheriff? Harriet asked. The farrier straightened. A sheriff would ask for records, witnesses, and someone willing to claim the horse in writing. Harriet folded her arms. Pritchard had done none of those things. Yet, the farrier said he would return in 4 days, then carried his tools toward the yard. Owen began bedding the stall with clean straw. You said you had seen horses change hands too quickly, Harriet said. Yes. Was Pritchard involved? The fork stopped once, then moved again. I have seen altered work on horses moved through men who did business with him. That is not the same as seeing him order it. No. Did you? No. Harriet watched him spread the straw evenly. You are very exact when truth protects you. Owen set the fork against the wall. Truth protects everyone better when it is exact. Silence protects the person holding it. His jaw shifted. Sometimes. And that page? A warning. Against Pritchard. Against believing one mark proves one story. Harriet stepped into the stall. Banner turned his head toward her, the red halter hanging from a peg near the door rather than on his face. I do not need you to decide what I am allowed to know. I know. Do you? I am trying to tell you what I can stand behind. Then start with what you saw. Owen looked at the horse instead of her. I saw codes used where names should have been. I saw horses entered under descriptions that changed before sale. I saw men who asked questions lose work. It was more than he had given the night before. Not enough. Was KD 14 one of those codes? Harriet asked. Owen's attention snapped to her. The movement was small. The answer was not. Why that number? Because if this horse is who I think he is, that is his number. Owen went still. You have a record? Yes. Show me. Harriet almost refused simply because he had refused her. Then Banner shifted, and the old habit of protecting evidence from pride won. Office, she said. You wait outside the desk until I take it out. Owen nodded. No insult taken, no attempt to follow too closely. In the ranch office, Harriet unlocked the lower drawer with the small brass key from her belt. Beneath tax receipts, farrier notes, and 3 cancelled sale agreements lay a brown leather breeding book worn smooth at the corners. She carried it to the table Before Owen crossed the threshold, he stopped just inside the open door. Harriet turned to the entries from 11 years earlier. Her father's hand ran narrow and upright across the page. KD 14. Dark bay colt. White hair left heel. Crescent scar beneath jaw after gait injury. Smooth 4-beat traveling gait. Easier left bend than right. Answers 2-note recall whistle. No sale valid without matching numbered counterfoil. Name, Banner. Harriet read the entry aloud. Owen listened without interrupting. Your father kept thorough books, he said. He believed memory was useful and paper was patient. Any sale? Not without the matching counterfoil. There is none. Harriet closed the book halfway. He disappeared 5 years ago from the north pasture. We found a cut fence and tracks toward the east road. My father searched for months. Owen's eyes remained on KD 14. Did Pritchard buy stock from your father? Some, lawfully. Every sale has a number. And debts. Harriet stiffened. My father owed several men after a bad winter. Pritchard was one. Owen did not seize on that. A debt is not a bill of sale. No. Harriet carried the book to the stable. Banner stood with his head low, resting the injured hoof. She opened to KD 14 again, then stepped into the aisle. If I am wrong, he may not answer. And if he does, Owen asked, then I know who he is, not who took him. Harriet gave the 2-note whistle. The sound rose and fell through the stable. Banner's ears came forward. He lifted his head, turned from the manger, and crossed the stall without hesitation. His muzzle stopped against Harriet's coat. The contact was soft enough to break her more thoroughly than force would have. She pressed one hand to the crescent scar beneath his jaw. Banner, she said. The gelding breathed into her palm. Owen stayed by the stall door, giving her the space rather than filling it. That was its own form of kindness. Harriet kept her hand under Banner's jaw until emotion could settle into something useful. You heard the code before today, she said. Owen's eyes dropped to the page in her hand. Yes, on your torn sheet, he did not answer. The refusal confirmed enough. Harriet closed the book. Then you knew this possibility before I did. I knew a code, not the horse. You could have told me. I should have told you the code. The admission came without defense. Harriet felt some part of her anger lose its footing, not disappear, change shape. Hoofbeats sounded in the yard. A rider in a dust-colored coat stopped near the porch and called for Harriet. She carried the breeding book back to the office, locked it in the lower drawer, then stepped outside with Owen several paces behind. The rider wore Pritchard's ranch badge on his saddle skirt. He removed his hat. Mr. Pritchard offers $150 for the bay. Cash today. He may put his ownership claim in writing, Harriet said. He says he has no wish to embarrass you. Then he should stop sending men to discuss my embarrassment. The rider's smile thinned. He would also renew his offer on Kestrel Draw. Fair price. You could leave before winter. My land is not a burden he gets to lift from me. A woman alone, with a banknote and disputed stock, may call it something else by January. Harriet held his gaze. Are you delivering an offer or a threat? Advice. Then I decline both. The rider glanced toward Owen. Maddox, a word. Anything you say to him on my property can be said in front of me, Harriet said. The man ignored her. $50 now if you persuade her to sell the horse. Steady work afterward if you leave with me today. Owen did not look at the money the rider produced. No, you have no loyalty here. That isn't what you're buying. Then what am I buying? Another person's choices. Owen's voice remained level. I don't sell those. The rider's face tightened. Pritchard was right about you. He usually is when describing men who refuse him. The rider shoved the money back into his coat and rode out. Harriet waited until the gate settled. "Your reputation," she said. "Did he give it to you? Part of it?" For refusing him. For refusing to sign something I believed was false." "What?" Owen looked toward the office where the breeding book lay locked away, a stock list, with KD-14 on it. "I won't say what I cannot prove from memory." Harriet's temper rose again. Owen reached into his outer pocket, not the hidden inner one, and took out a small notebook. "But I will write what I observed here today." At the office desk, he dated a statement and wrote only "facts," older brand beneath newer burn, physical marks matching the Kestrel record, horse responding to the 2-note whistle, and the name KD-14 appearing in Harriet Lyle's bound breeding book. He signed it. Harriet read every line before placing it in the top drawer beside the bill of sale, work agreement, bank notice, and $50 tag. On the way back to the stable, a bucket clanged behind Banner's stall. The gelding jumped sideways. Harriet's boot slid in loose straw. Owen's hand lifted but stopped short of her arm. "Your elbow?" he asked. Harriet gave one sharp nod. His fingers closed above her elbow, steady and warm, holding only until her boots found the floor. Then he released her. No lingering claim, no false concern. Harriet drew a breath. Owen stepped back. Inside the stall, Banner watched them both. Later, when Harriet left the stable, Owen took the torn page from his inner coat pocket. He opened it beneath the window light. This time, the audience of one was himself. Near the ragged binding edge, written beside a cash notation, stood the same code Harriet had read from the breeding book. KD-14. 4 days later, the farrier returned to find Banner, standing more evenly, but still unwilling to let a blanket settle across his back. Owen had repaired the red rawhide halter's cracked buckle and used it only for leading, never tying the gelding short. Each morning he walked Banner twice around the soft edge of the training corral, then stopped before fatigue turned improvement into punishment. Harriet watched from the office porch when she could spare the time. She also watched Owen's coat. The torn page remained inside it. He did not pretend otherwise. That honesty about the existence of the secret did not excuse the secret itself. Frost silvered the shaded side of the stable on the morning of the farrier's return. Banner gave up his right forehoof after one patient request. The farrier pared a loose edge, examined the crack, and ran his thumb along the wall. "Hasn't climbed," he said. "No heat, no swelling." Harriet stood near Banner's shoulder. "Can he carry a rider?" "Not yet." "How long?" "Ask the hoof again in several days. His back may give you a different answer." Owen had already laid the saddle purchased, with Banner, across 2 sawhorses in the aisle. It was a broad stock saddle with a worn sheepskin lining and darker stains where sweat had soaked through. The farrier pressed beneath the front edge. "Tree may be wide for him." Owen shook his head. Wide would not explain those. He lifted the lining with the tip of a hoof pick. 2 narrow folds of rawhide had been pushed beneath it, one on each side of the withers. Hardened by old sweat, they formed ridges where the saddle should have spread weight evenly. Harriet reached toward one. Owen caught himself before saying stop. "May I?" he asked. She withdrew her hand. "Show me." He loosened the stitching just enough to expose the shims without removing them. Each had been folded twice and cut to nearly the same length. The edges were polished from pressure. "Someone trying to fit a wide saddle?" Harriet asked. "Possible," the farrier said. Owen studied the placement. A poor fit could happen by ignorance. These were put where they would bite every time the rider tightened the cinch. Harriet touched Banner's neck. The gelding's skin trembled beneath her palm when the saddle shifted on the sawhorse. Could that make him rear? Rear, bite, refuse mounting, strike when a hand came near his back, Owen said. Pain teaches fast. Does it prove who put them there? Owen met her eyes. No. Does it prove Pritchard ordered it? No. The farrier looked between them. It proves the horse had reason to fight the saddle. Harriet nodded once. Then that is what we say. No more. Owen lowered the lining. You want it left as found? Yes. Why? Because if this ever reaches a hearing, I will not ask anyone to trust our memory of what we changed. She turned to the farrier. Will you write what you observed? I can write that 2 rawhide shims were beneath the lining, and that their placement would concentrate pressure over sore withers. Nothing about who placed them. Wouldn't swear it if you paid me. Good. The word surprised him. Harriet took the tack-room key from her belt. Owen carried the saddle inside without shifting the lining again. He set it on the back rack and stepped out before Harriet closed the door. She locked it herself and returned the key to her belt. You do not want me keeping it, he asked. I want the object where its movement is known. Fair. That word is doing considerable work between us. Better than suspicion doing all of it. Harriet almost asked about the page again. Instead, she stored the farrier's signed note in the office drawer beside Owen's witness statement. The bill of sale, the work agreement, the bank notice, and the $50 tag, 1 proof at a time. No more than each could carry. By afternoon, the frost had burned off the corral. Owen brought Banner out in the repaired red halter and handed Harriet the lead without asking whether she wanted him inside the rail. She did. Stay near the gate, she said. Do not take the rope unless I give it to you. Your horse, my decision, I remember. Harriet led Banner into a wide circle. He followed at the walk until she raised her hand too high near his right eye. His neck stiffened and his hindquarters swung away. She lowered the hand and tried again. The same resistance. Owen remained where she had placed him. You are turning his head before his feet know where to go, he said. What would you change? Your angle. Show me once. He entered the circle only after she extended the rope. He did not close his fist over hers. Harriet released it fully. Owen stepped toward Banner's shoulder, not his face, and shifted his own body toward the space he wanted the horse to leave. No pull, no sharp command. Banner moved 1 forefoot, then the other, and completed the right turn without throwing his head. Owen returned the rope at once. Harriet repeated the movement. Banner hesitated, then followed. Better, Owen said. Because you taught him. Because you listened. Harriet tried the left side. Banner bent more easily, just as her father's entry had recorded. That difference belonged to the horse's memory, not Owen's skill, and Owen treated it that way. He did not claim the success. When they finished, Harriet reached for the rasp she kept near the fence to smooth a splinter on the gate rail. The handle had split along one side. That will open your palm, Owen said. I know. There is a file in the stable. I know that too. He leaned one hip against the fence while she fetched it. Harriet seated herself on an overturned bucket and began shaving the broken edge. The handle rolled beneath the pressure. Owen put his right hand around the far end to hold it steady. Their knuckles touched. Neither moved. The contact was small, warm, and entirely unnecessary after the rasp stopped turning. Harriet felt the rough ridge of an old scar across one of his fingers. Owen's thumb shifted 1/2 inch, not over her skin but close enough for the movement to register. Then Harriet drew the file down the wood again. You were right about my angle, she said. Remember the date. I intend to record it." He released the handle. The loss of contact was sharper than the touch had been. Hoofbeats sounded at the south gate before either could speak again. 2 buyers rode in, men Harriet had written 3 days earlier about the young kestrel mares. She stood, brushed wood shavings from her skirt, and met them near the yard. "They are in the north pasture," she said. "I can have Tom bring them down." The older buyer did not dismount. "We won't inspect today." "You rode 14 miles to tell me that." "We heard the sheriff may seize stock carrying kestrel marks." "No sheriff has made such an order." "Pritchard says title is uncertain." "Pritchard has filed no written claim." The younger man glanced toward banner in the corral, that the ruined bay from Alamosa. Harriet felt Owen come to a stop several paces behind her. He did not speak. He waited. She gave him the smallest nod. "The horse is injured," Owen said. "Not ruined." Miss Lyle knows his old response patterns better than any man who handled him last month. The older buyer frowned. "And who are you?" "A hired trainer. Pritchard says you were dismissed from his outfit for taking what wasn't yours." Owen's face became still. "Pritchard says many things before he puts them in writing." Harriet stepped forward before the exchange could become about Owen's reputation instead of her sale. "You asked to inspect 3 mares. Their records are clean. Their marks are unchanged. If you refuse without seeing them, say plainly why." The buyer shifted in his saddle. "Because no freight contractor wants horses tied up in a county dispute." "There is no county dispute." "There will be." He touched his hat. "When it is settled, right again." They rode out without looking at the mares. Dust settled behind them in a thin brown sheet. Harriet stood until the gate stopped moving. 3 mares not inspected meant no sale. No sale meant less winter feed. The bank's 35 days had not paused because men preferred rumor to records. Owen remained behind her. "Pritchard has moved from buying banner to poisoning every kestrel mark," he said. Harriet turned. "Why?" "Because if buyers fear the whole herd, you run out of time faster. And banner? Maybe he was meant to look worthless long enough to pass through Alamosa without questions. The saddle, someone kept using him after pain, should have been obvious. Neglect. Pain can be called neglect." Owen's gaze moved toward the locked tack room. A changed brand takes intention. His hand went to the front of his coat, stopping over the hidden page. Harriet watched it. "Whatever you are protecting with that paper," she said, "Pritchard is already using the time. It buys him." The buyer's dust had settled. Before Harriet finished calculating what their refusal would cost, 3 mares unsold meant winter oats cut by half, 2 roof repairs delayed, and no margin if the bank shortened its patience. Pritchard had not taken a horse from her yard. He had taken the value from every horse still inside it. By dawn the next morning, Harriet had decided rumor would not be answered with another argument. It would be answered with a date, a witness, and a man willing to put his name beneath both. Banner stood in the soft side of the training corral, wearing the repaired red rawhide halter. Owen waited outside the rail until Harriet motioned him in. "I am not testing whether he is Banner," she said. That was settled. "Then what are you testing?" "Whether his body remembers the pattern my father recorded before someone taught him pain." Harriet led Banner straight across the corral, turned him left, then brought him through 2 short right circles. He bent easily to the left. On the right, his neck stiffened and his stride shortened until Harriet lowered her hand and widened the turn. The 4-beat traveling rhythm returned beneath him. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not speed, balance. She halted without pulling and gave the 2-note whistle. Banner raised his head and stepped toward her. Owen stayed near his shoulder without touching the rope. Same differences as the book, he said. Easy left, guarded right, and the gate. Smooth once you stop asking him to brace. Harriet rubbed the gelding beneath the jaw scar. My father called habits signatures. Marks can be changed. A horse carries memory in more places than hide. Owen glanced toward her office. The book named the farrier who shod him before he vanished. Ezra Pike. Last address was Del Norte. You trust him? I trust that he wrote his work beside my father's entry. The telegraph can tell me whether he stands behind it. Owen nodded toward the road. You want me to ride with you? Banner stays here. Tom will walk him at noon. Harriet handed him the lead. You and I go to Alamosa. They left Kestrel Draw early enough for Frost to remain in the cottonwood shade. Harriet carried the message wording inside her coat and the cost of each telegraph word in her head. Owen rode beside her, never crowding the narrow stretches. At the irrigation ditch, where their fingers had first met over Banner's lead, neither mentioned it. The memory remained anyway. Alamosa was awake by the time they reached the telegraph office. Freight wagons stood near the platform. Men moved harness and crates beneath the hard metallic clatter of the railroad yard. Harriet tied her sorrel at the rail and handed the operator her message. Azra pick stop did you shoe? Dark Bay Gelding Cade 14 for Kestrel Draw before his disappearance. Stop was original Kestrel Bran Clear stop reply Harriet style Alamosa. The operator counted the words and named the charge. Harriet paid from the small household purse she had not emptied at the livery. When she stepped outside, Graham Pritchard stood beside Owen's horse. He had positioned himself close enough to appear conversational, and far enough from the telegraph door to believe Harriet would not hear the end of it. $300, Pritchard said, paid across 6 months. Permanent work afterward. Owen's hands rested loose at his sides. For what? Leave Kestrel Draw. Tell buyers Miss Lyle knew the horse was disputed when she purchased it. Tell them she hired you to make a lame gelding appear sound. That would be false. It would be useful. To you. Pritchard's gaze moved to Harriet as she approached. Useful things are often unpopular before they become profitable. Owen turned toward her rather than letting Pritchard control the timing. He offered $300 over 6 months and permanent work afterward. He wants me to leave today and say you knowingly bought disputed property, then hired me to manufacture a soundness claim. Pritchard's face hardened. Harriet stopped beside Owen. Did he leave anything out? She asked. Only the part where I warned him the bank will not wait for pride. The bank is not your concern. It will be when you cannot pay. Harriet kept her voice even. You have now offered to buy Banner, buy Kestrel Draw, and buy a witness, yet you still will not put an ownership claim in writing. Because I do not need to, then you do not own him. Pritchard smiled without warmth. Possession has made you brave. Records made me cautious. You should learn the difference. He looked at Owen. This is your last chance to leave with wages instead of blame. Owen answered without raising his voice. I have already been blamed by you. The wages are less tempting than you imagine. Pritchard stepped away from the horses. When Kestrel Draw falls, remember which choice did it. Harriet waited until he had crossed the street. Then she faced Owen. You told me before I found out. Yes. Why? Because a hidden offer can be used against the person who never heard it. And a hidden page, his gaze held hers, can be used against everyone if it is opened badly. That is not your choice alone. I know. Do you? I am beginning to. They rode out of Alamosa before noon. Wind moved low across the valley, pushing dry grass against the road. Harriet let several miles pass before asking the question Owen had postponed since the first day. How long did you work for Pritchard? 6 months. Doing what? Training remount prospects, moving stock between his main yard and leased pastures. Did you use the east gate? Owen's right hand tightened once on the reins. Yes. Why does Ezra Pike's name make you think of it? Because horses brought through the main gate went into the regular book. Horses brought through the east gate sometimes went under numbers. And you saw KD 14. I saw the code on the page in your coat. He did not deny it. I want that page opened before witnesses. Whose protection is that for? Harriet asked. Yours, mine, and the page's. That sounds noble. It is fear with better manners. The honesty reached her before she could defend against it. Owen continued. Pritchard ordered me to sign a stock list that did not match the animals I had handled. 3 descriptions were wrong. 2 brands had changed between arrival and sale. Did you sign? No. Did you report him? No. Why? I had no buyer willing to challenge him, no ranch of my own, and no man in office eager to risk his contracts over a hired hand's word. So he dismissed you, he said. I stole from him. By then I had. Harriet turned in the saddle. The page. Yes. What does it say beyond KD 14? Owen's face closed, not from anger but decision. I will show you, not on this road, and not with only the 2 of us to say what condition it was in. You do not get to delay forever by calling delay caution. I am asking for 2 days. Why 2? Time to bring the sheriff and Tom into the room. Time to describe the page before it leaves my hand. Harriet looked ahead toward Kestrel Draw. You have until the reply comes from Ezra. After that, the page opens. Agreed. 2 days later, a boy from Alamosa rode into the yard with a folded telegram tucked beneath his hatband against the wind. Harriet paid him, carried the message into the office, and opened it with Owen standing outside the threshold. Ezra Pike, Repeley's stop. Shotade 14 September, 3rd 1880. 8 stop. Original Kestrel brand clear and unscurred stop horse. Vanished 2 days. Later stop. Elias style. Never sold that gelding stop ask, who brought him through Pritchard Eastgate. Harriet read it twice. September 3rd. Original brand intact. Gone September 5th. Whatever had been burned over Banner's mark happened after he left Kestrel Draw. Owen removed his hat. That fixes the window. And names the route. It names a question. Harriet crossed the office until only a narrow board of floor lay between them. You reported Pritchard's offer before I had to. Drag it from you. I should have done the same with the page. Yes, she reached for his right wrist before caution could turn the choice into another discussion. 2 fingers settled against the inside, where his pulse beat steady beneath sun-warmed skin. Owen did not close his hand around hers. He did not step nearer. He waited. Harriet held the contact for 1 breath, then another. Gratitude was not trust complete. Attraction was not proof. Yet his stillness gave her room to feel both without owing either. She withdrew her hand. Tomorrow morning, she said, you tell me everything that happened at Pritchard's East Gate. Owen's gaze remained on her face. Tomorrow, Owen told her about the East Gate before the frost had lifted from the yard. Harriet had already placed Ezra Pike's telegram in the office drawer beside the bill of sale, the bank notice, the work agreement, Owen's witness statement, and the $50 tag. The breeding book remained locked below. The torn page remained inside Owen's coat. He stood on the porch rather than entering until she said, Come in. Leave the door open. He obeyed. Tom Mercer was still checking the north pasture. and the sheriff could not reach Kestrel Draw before noon. Harriet set the office clock where both of them could see it. "Start with what you saw," she said. "Not what you feared, not what you guessed." Owen removed his hat. Pritchard kept two ways of receiving horses. Stock bought openly came through the main gate. The name, price, seller, and brand went into the regular book. And the east gate, used before dawn or after dark. Horses came through under numbers. Sometimes mud covered the brands. Sometimes the marks had already been changed. Harriet's fingers tightened against the desk edge. Who brought them? Different riders. Some of Pritchard's, some hired for one drive. Did you see Banner? No, not then. But you saw KD-14. Yes. Where? Owen touched the inside of his coat. On the ledger leaf I took when Pritchard dismissed me. Harriet held his gaze. What was written beside it? Run iron. The two words struck with more force than shouting would have. Harriet glanced toward the stable, as though the overburn might be visible through the office wall. Any name? No. A cash notation. Two other codes on the same leaf, more on the pages beside it. You told me you saw codes. You did not tell me you took an original page. No. Why? Because removing it can be called theft, even when the book records stolen. Horses. And because you wanted it to protect you. Owen did not soften the answer. Yes, Harriet rose. At noon you open it in front of Tom, the sheriff, and me. We describe its condition before anyone handles it. Agreed. Then it leaves your coat. Agreed. If there is another paper, there isn't another original. The wording was too narrow. Harriet heard it. That was not what I asked. Before Owen could answer, hoofbeats hammered across the yard. Tom pulled his gelding up hard beside the porch. North fence is down, he said. Brood mares are through and spreading toward the wash. Harriet was moving before the last word. Cut or fallen? Cut clean. Owen reached for his hat. Harriet pointed toward the corral. Saddle your bay. Tom, take the west side. Do not press them downhill. What about Banner? Owen asked. He stays. What do you want from me? The question steadied her more than an offer to take charge would have. Harriet buckled her coat. Hold the east flank. Turn them toward the spring gate. Do not crowd the lead mares. Your route? My ranch. Then I follow it. They reached the north pasture under a rising wind. 3 strands of wire hung loose between 2 posts, each cut at nearly the same height. Beyond the break, the brood band moved in a wide, nervous crescent. 30 mares, some young, several heavy with foal. Laurel, the grey-led mare, had taken the open ground and was drawing the others toward the shallow wash where loose shale could break a leg. Tom came in too fast from the west. The mares bunched and wheeled. Ease off, Harriet shouted. Tom checked his horse. Owen held the eastern edge without pushing. He had room to cross in front of Laurel and turn her himself. He did not. Harriet took the small brass mare bell from her saddlebag and struck it once against the horn. The clear note traveled farther than her voice. Several heads lifted. She rang it again, then gave the 2-note recall used at Kestrel Draw. Laurel slowed. 1 chestnut mare stopped behind her. Harriet turned her sorrel toward the spring gate at a walk. Bell, whistle, walk. No chase. Laurel took 3 uncertain steps after her. The chestnuts followed. Then the rest of the band began to bend. Owen rode the east line with his hands low, leaving the mares enough space to choose the turn. Tom corrected his distance on the west. The open crescent narrowed into a moving column. Harriet led them through the spring gate and closed it herself. Count, she said. Tom rode the fence line, naming each mare as she passed. 27, 28. Harriet searched the rise. Dust moved behind two late mares coming at a trot. Owen kept his position rather than breaking formation to meet them. They crossed the gate together. 30, Tom called. Relief came, but not safety. Someone had chosen the exact section of fence least visible from the house. Harriet rode back to the break. The cuts were clean. One post carried a fresh boot scrape on the outside. Owen dismounted and crouched near the tracks. 2 riders, he said, maybe 3. From the east, the prints came from that direction. Harriet remembered his earlier warning. Direction was not proof. Mark the clearest track, she told Tom. Then ride for the sheriff. Tell him the fence was cut from outside and ask him to inspect before dark. Tom tied a strip of cloth near the best impression and rode south. Harriet dismounted. We repair enough to hold the pasture. Owen looked at the sun. The page will wait until the sheriff reaches us. The mares could not. No argument. They reset the post, spliced the lower wire, and tightened the upper strands as daylight thinned. Owen handled the pliers, while Harriet held the lantern and fed wire through the staple. Cold gathered fast after sunset. Their shoulders brushed once when he leaned close to test the final tension. Neither stepped away. That should hold until morning, he said. Harriet lifted the lantern. Dust marked one side of his face. A shallow cut crossed his knuckle where the wire had slipped. Your hand. Nothing worth stopping for. I decide what is worth stopping for on my ranch. The words should have sounded sharp. They did not. Owen's eyes lowered to her mouth, then returned to her face. He set the pliers on the post. Empty hands. No work between them. Harriet became aware of his breath in the cold air, the warmth of him beneath his coat, and the memory of his pulse under her fingers. Anger remained. So did trust, incomplete and growing in spite of it. Owen moved only half a step closer. Harriet. Her name was not a claim, it was a door left open. She did not retreat. His voice dropped. Do you want this? Hoofbeats cut across the dark before she could answer. Owen stepped back at once. The sheriff rode into the lantern light with Tom behind him and a folded paper tucked inside his coat. He examined the cut wire, the boot scrape, and the marked tracks before speaking of anything else. I will enter what I saw, he said. But I came with notice from Conejos. Harriet took the paper. Graham Pritchard had filed an ownership complaint concerning the Dark Bay gelding. Held at Kestrel Draw. The examination was set for October 17th before the county judge at Conejos. Until then, Banner could not be sold, moved beyond Conejos County, or rebranded. I am not taking him tonight, the sheriff said, but any records either side intends to rely upon should be placed with the county clerk before the hearing. Harriet looked toward Owen's coat. The original ledger leaf was still there. Noon had passed under cut wire, frightened mares, and a question left unanswered. You will see the page at first light, she told the sheriff. Then she faced Owen. After that, it never returns to your pocket. Owen's expression held no resistance. It won't. At first light, the page came out of Owen's coat. Before the sheriff entered the office, the farrier arrived to examine Banner one more time. The cold had tightened the yard, but the dark bay stood square beneath the stable lantern. The farrier lifted the right forehoof, pressed along the crack, and waited for Banner to settle his weight. No heat, he said. No swelling. Edge is holding. Harriet stood beside the stall with the red halter looped over one wrist. Can he carry me for one circuit? On soft ground. No saddle, no hard turn. You stop if he shortens the stride. One circuit, Harriet repeated. The farrier looked at Owen. And no man deciding the horse is sound because the woman wants him to be. Owen answered without offense. Her decision. Your limit, the farrier nodded once, satisfied, and left for the south road. Harriet returned the halter to its peg, then crossed to the office. The sheriff stood inside the open doorway. Tom Mercer waited near the wall with his hat in both hands. Owen entered last. He removed the folded ledger leaf from the inner pocket of his coat and placed it on the desk without opening it. Torn along the binding edge, he said. Creased twice. No envelope. I have carried it since Pritchard dismissed me. The sheriff examined the outside without touching it. Open it. Owen unfolded the paper. Harriet saw KD-14 first. Beside it, written in a tighter hand, were the words "Run Iron." Lower on the page stood KD-22 and KD-23, a cash amount, and initials she did not recognize. Her breathing went shallow. Those other codes, she said. You knew they were there. Yes. Yesterday you said more codes were on the pages beside this one. There were. How many? 6 or 7 that I remember. And you took only this leaf. Only one original. The answer landed with the same narrow precision she had heard before the fence broke. Harriet did not let him turn it aside. You told me there was no other original. You did not say there was no other record. Owen held her gaze. No. Tom shifted near the wall. The sheriff looked from one of them to the other, then back to the page. We will deal with what is on this desk. Harriet hated the delay, but she also knew he was right. Facts first. The sheriff read the entries aloud, while Tom wrote a description of the paper's condition. Harriet added the date, the place, and the names of all 4 people present. Owen stated that he had removed the leaf from Pritchard's stock ledger when dismissed, and that he had not altered its writing afterward. The sheriff folded the page along its old creases, wrapped it in plain paper, tied it with cord, and pressed sealing wax over the knot. Tom signed across one fold. Harriet signed beneath him. The sheriff marked the outside with the hearing date and the words to be lodged with Conejos County Clerk. It will not return to him, Harriet said. No, the sheriff answered. It goes south with me. Owen did not reach for it. That should have eased her. Instead, Harriet stared at the empty place on the desk where the page had lain. You saw a pattern, she said to him. Not one horse. A pattern. I saw numbers. I did not know which ranches they belonged to. You knew enough to copy them. Owen's expression changed. Barely. The movement confirmed more than a confession would have. Did you copy the other codes? Harriet asked. The sheriff paused with the sealed packet in his hand. Owen answered after one breath. I wrote down what I could remember. Where is it? Not here. Anger moved through her, cold and exact. You let us seal the original while another record remains in your keeping. It is not evidence in Pritchard's hand. It is my memory on paper. Then it should have been disclosed before this room opened. Yes, the sheriff's jaw tightened. Bring it to Conejos. I will. No, Harriet said. You will bring it to me before you leave this ranch today. Owen looked at her. Agreed. The sheriff tucked the sealed packet inside his coat and rode south. Tom went to check the repaired fence. Harriet remained in the office with Owen and all the unsaid things the sheriff had left behind. Banner was cleared for one circuit, she said. Owen's brow drew together. Now, Harriet, do you believe it will injure him? No, not under the farrier's limit. Then stay outside the rail unless I ask. He accepted the boundary. All right. The training corral had softened under the morning sun. Harriet laid a folded blanket and light pad across Banner's back. No saddle tree, no rawhide shims. The gelding tensed, then relaxed when nothing tightened around him. Owen brought the mounting block, but stopped before placing it. Where? Left side. He set it there. Do you want my hand? Beside me, not holding me, a faint warmth touched his face, gone almost before it appeared. Harriet mounted. Banner lifted his head. Owen released the lead entirely. That mattered. He did not keep control in reserve. Harriet breathed once, lowered her hands, and gave the two-note whistle. Banner stepped forward, one circuit. Slow, his four-beat rhythm came back beneath her, not flawless, but remembered. At the right bend, his stride shortened. Harriet widened the turn. He settled again. Owen walked near Banner's shoulder without touching horse or rider. When Harriet reached the block, she dismounted under her own weight. Her boot slipped against damp wood. Owen's hand rose, then stopped. Harriet caught the rail and steadied herself. "You trusted me with the reins," she said. "They were yours. The page should have been too." Pain crossed his face. "Yes. And the copied codes? Also yours to know. Yet you still have them. I was afraid they would be called invention before they could lead us to horses. You were afraid for the proof, and for myself. The honesty should have made the wound smaller. It did not." Harriet stood close enough to see the tiredness beneath his eyes, the man who had followed her route at the cut fence, reported the bribe, asked before touching her, and still chosen for her when truth would arrive. Desire and anger occupied the same narrow ground. Harriet stepped forward and kissed him. Brief, certain, chosen. Owen did not seize the moment. His right hand lifted toward her cheek and stopped. Harriet leaned into his palm. Only then did he touch her. The kiss deepened by one breath. Wanting him was true. Forgiving him was not. A stall gate struck wood behind them. Banner startled toward the opening. Owen turned fast and caught the swinging panel with his left shoulder. The impact drove a harsh breath from him, but he shoved the gate closed before Banner reached it. Harriet was beside him at once. "Your shoulder, bruised, inside. The horse, Tom, can watch him. Move." In the office, Harriet pulled Owen's coat from his injured arm. A smaller folded paper slid from the lining and fell beside her boot. Harriet picked it up. 3 copied codes, KD-22, KD-23, one more beneath them. His handwriting, not memory he had merely promised to bring Zun south, a record he had carried through every argument. Harriet folded it once. "You said you would bring it to me before leaving." "I was going to." After deciding when, he did not answer. "Your employment ends today," she said. "You will be paid through this morning." His face lost color, but he nodded. "All right. Leave Kestrel drawer before sundown. Harriet, do not use my name to ask the kiss to change the consequence." Owen closed his mouth. Harriet placed the copied list in an envelope, sealed it with red wax, and wrote across the flap that it was to be lodged with the same matter at Conejos. "Tom will carry this, not you. Understood." Owen lifted his coat with his good arm. At the doorway he stopped. "I am sorry." Harriet held the sealed envelope against her palm. "Then let the next truth arrive before I have to discover it." Owen stepped outside. The first kiss remained on her mouth. The second concealment remained in her hand. Owen left Kestrel drawer before sundown with his bedroll tied behind the saddle and his left arm held close against his ribs. Harriet watched from the office porch until the south gate closed behind him. He did not turn back. She had ordered him gone. That did not make the empty road easier to bear. The sealed envelope containing his copied codes lay on the desk until dawn. When Tom Mercer carried it south with written instructions for the Conejos county clerk, Harriet also gave Tom a brief account stating that Owen's wages were settled through October 4th and that she claimed no return of the advance already paid. A broken trust did not give her permission to corrupt a bargain. Owen reached Alamosa after dark and rented the narrow room above the livery. By morning, the bruise across his left shoulder had stiffened enough that he could not raise the arm above his chest. He asked the livery owner for work brushing horses, filling grain measures, and mending light tack with his right hand. He did not ask to handle difficult stock. Tom found him near 10 o'clock, rubbing down a chestnut gelding in the rear aisle. "This is from Miss Lyle," Tom said. Owen read the wage account once. She didn't ask for the unearned part back. She said the agreement ended for cause. She did not say. The paper stopped meaning what it meant yesterday. Owen folded the account and placed it in his outer pocket. And the codes? Going to Conejos. Tom rested one boot on the threshold. "Not through you." "Good. You mean that?" "Yes, you could have saved her the trouble by giving them up sooner." Owen set the brush on the stall ledge. "Yes." Tom waited for a defense. None came. "How is Banner?" Owen asked. "Sounder. She will not saddle him." "Her decision. You are learning late. Late still counts if a man keeps at it." Tom left for the South Road. Graham Pritchard arrived before noon. He entered the stable aisle, carrying the smell of cold air and expensive tobacco. The sheriff had served him notice that morning that an original ledger leaf naming KD 14 had been lodged for the October 17th examination. Anger had made him more polished, not less. "Miss Lyle has dismissed you," he said. Owen resumed brushing the chestnut. She had cause. "Then we may finally speak without her pride standing between us." Her pride was never the obstacle. Pritchard drew a folded statement from his coat. "I have improved yesterday's offer. $300 in cash. A foreman's position afterward. For the same lie, for a smaller truth. You will say, Harriet Lyle believed the horse disputed before purchase. You will say, she hired you to make a lame animal appear sound. Both statements are near enough to fact. Near enough is where you keep most of your business." Pritchard's mouth tightened. "You stole a page from my ledger. I took a page naming horses your regular book did not. The sheriff's seal does not make theft honest. No, it keeps you from changing the page before a judge sees it." Pritchard stepped closer. "You think Conejos will trust a hired hand with a ruined name?" "Not by himself." Owen laid the brush down. "That is why the page stands beside the horse, the brand, the farrier's telegram, and Miss Lyle's records. Records she controls. Records written before she knew you would need them false." Pritchard tapped the statement against his palm. "Sign this, and she leaves Kestrel Draw with enough money to begin elsewhere. You do not offer people dignity. You price their surrender. And you have become noble since she kissed you?" Owen's face went still. Pritchard had guessed, not known. Owen gave him nothing. "I'm not noble," he said. "I hid evidence because I feared my word would fail. Then I hid the copy because I wanted proof strong enough to protect me too. She was right to send me away. Then repair the damage. Sign. I won't repair my wrong with yours." Pritchard slipped the statement back into his coat. "When the bank takes her land, remember that righteousness bought nothing. The choice remains hers, not for long." He walked out. The livery owner emerged from the tack room carrying a bridle he had spent far too long sorting. "You knew I could hear?" he asked. "I hoped you could. Want me to repeat it around town?" "No." Owen picked up the brush again. "To the sheriff or judge if asked." Gossip helped Pritchard. It does not become honest because it favors us. 2 days later, Tom returned to Kestrel Draw with a clerk's receipt showing the copied list had been entered beside the sealed ledger leaf. Harriet read the receipt, placed it in the office drawer with the other papers, and asked no questions about Owen beyond whether Tom had found him alive and able to travel. Stiff shoulder, Tom said. Still working. Harriet closed the drawer. The kiss remained an unwelcome memory because it had been real. So had the concealment. Neither cancelled the other. On the morning of October 8th, the north pasture was too quiet. Laurel stood near the enclosed spring, but the two chestnut mares that usually grazed beside her were absent. Harriet counted the brood band from the ridge. 28. She counted again from the gate. Still 28. The repaired section of fence remained tight. 50 yards east, however, a lower run of wire had been lifted from its staples and set back loosely enough to appear whole from the ranch yard. 2 sets of mare tracks crossed beneath it. At least 2 shod riding horses had waited outside. Tom crouched beside the post. "Pritchard, direction is not proof," Harriet said. The words had Owen's shape, and she resented how useful they remained. She followed the trail until it reached pale soil near the wash. One chestnut dragged the outer edge of her left hind shoe, leaving a broken scrape every few steps. Harriet knew that wear. "Wren," she said, "you are certain?" The farrier reset that shoe 12 days ago. She still carries the edge unevenly. The second mare had stepped across softer ground only once. The print showed a slight outward turn at the right hind. Harriet returned to the office, unlocked the lower drawer, and opened the breeding book. KD 22. Wren. Chestnut mare. Notched right ear. Left hind shoe wears at outer edge. The next entry stopped her breath. KD 23. Finch. Chestnut mare. White scar beneath right fetlock. The same 2 codes Owen had copied beneath banners. These were not random mares taken by riders who found a weak fence. Someone had selected them from a list. Harriet closed the book and locked it away. Refusing Owen's help would protect her pride. It might also cost Wren and Finch the only tracker who understood how Pritchard moved coded horses. She took a clean sheet of paper. Owen Maddox. 2 kestrel mares were taken east during the night. Their codes are KD 22 and KD 23. Both appear on the copy now lodged at Conejos. I require your knowledge as a witness and tracker. You will return only if you agree to share every fact, name, track, and inference immediately. You will not conceal information for my protection, your protection, or the protection of the evidence. You will not act beyond my instruction. This is not a renewal of employment, and it is not forgiveness. You may refuse, Harriet Lyle. She handed the note to Tom. Take it to Owen. Wait for an answer. Do not persuade him. Tom returned near sunset. Owen rode several lengths behind him, favoring his left shoulder and keeping the reins mostly in his right hand. He stopped outside the south gate. He did not touch the latch. Tom rode through and handed Harriet her note. Beneath her signature, Owen had written, "I agree to every condition." Harriet walked to the gate. Owen waited on the road with dust along his hat brim and no expectation in his posture. "You may come in," she said, "for the mares." "For the mares," he answered. "The office door stays open." "Understood. No evidence remains in your coat." "There is none." Harriet lifted the latch. Owen entered only after she stepped aside. At the loosened fence, he dismounted with care and studied the tracks without stepping across them. "2 riders," he said. "They kept the mares at a walk. How can you tell? Stride stays even. No deep push from the hind feet. They did not hurry until the ground turned hard. Why steal slowly?" Owen followed Wren's dragging shoe mark toward the east, because they were not afraid of being followed. Harriet stood beside him without touching. "They want us to find them." "Yes, for the hearing. Pritchard cannot prove you stole horses already in your pasture. Owen pointed toward the open country beyond the wash. But if Wren and Finch appear on his leased ground under the same codes as Banner, he can claim Kestrel records were built after the fact. Harriet looked east, where the trail vanished into gathering dark. They aren't being taken to sell, Owen said. They're being kept to prove you never controlled your own herd. The mares had been left where honest men could find them, and dishonest men could explain them. By sunrise, Harriet had sent Tom for the sheriff and ridden east with Owen along Wren's dragging shoe mark. The trail vanished twice in gravel, then returned beside a shallow wash where damp soil held the outside scrape of the mare's left hind shoe. Owen dismounted with care, keeping his injured left arm close to his body. Same gait, he said. Harriet crouched beside the mark, same wear. Wren drags the outer edge when the ground is soft. You can swear to that? The sheriff asked when he caught up an hour later with Tom and 2 neighboring ranchers. I can swear the farrier reset that shoe 12 days ago, and the wear returned the same way. The sheriff studied the impression, then the tracks of 2 mounted riders. Where does this road lead? Owen pointed east. Pritchard's leased holding pasture. One of the ranchers, Amos Dillard, gave him a hard look. You worked it? Yes. How many gates? A south gate from the road. A narrow service gate behind the cottonwoods. Harriet mounted again. Which one was used for coded horses? The service gate. The answer came before she had to drag it from him. That mattered. She did not praise him for it. They reached the pasture near noon. The south gate stood open, and a hired man leaned against the post, with the comfortable posture of someone expecting company. Beyond him, more than 20 horses grazed beneath low cottonwoods. Wren and Finch stood together near the fence. Harriet recognized Wren by the notch in her right ear. Finch lifted one hind leg, exposing the white scar beneath her fetlock, alive, uninjured, visible from the road. The hired man stepped into their path. Private stock. The sheriff rode forward. Then identify the owner, Mr. Pritchard owns what is here. Those 2 mares belong to Kestrel Draw, Harriet said. The man's attention passed over her and settled on Owen. Maddox put you onto them. Harriet dismounted. Their tracks did. She carried the brown leather breeding book in the satchel tied behind her saddle. Before leaving Kestrel Draw, she had unlocked the lower desk drawer in front of Tom, removed the book, and written the date and purpose in the ranch daybook. She opened to KD 22, Wren, chestnut mare, notched right ear, left hind shoe wears at the outside edge, then KD 23, Finch, chestnut mare, white scar beneath right fetlock. The hired man shrugged. Marks can belong to any horse. Some can, Harriet said. That is why we use more than one. The sheriff nodded toward the mares. Bring them to the fence. I take orders from Mr. Pritchard. Today you take one from me. The man entered the pasture with a rope. Wren swung her hindquarters away each time he approached. He shortened the loop and moved faster. Harriet raised her voice. Do not chase her. She won't lead. She will. Harriet stepped to the fence and gave the short rising call used at Kestrel Draw for brood mares. Wren's ears came forward. Harriet called again. The mare left the hired man standing with slack rope and walked toward the fence. Finch followed close behind. Amos Dillard let out a low breath. That is enough for me. It is not enough for the hearing, Harriet said. We record every mark. The sheriff wrote while Harriet named the ear notch, shoe wear, fetlock scar, coat color, and response call. Tom wrote the time, location, and witnesses in a second hand. Owen remained outside the pasture. He touched neither horse nor paper. His part was testimony, not control. Amos moved along the rail and stopped at a roan gelding farther in. That one may be mine. The horse carried a white splash beneath the girth and a split left ear. Amos produced a worn sale and breeding record from his saddlebag. The identifying marks matched one of the codes on Owen's copied list. Seth Corbin, the second rancher, found a sorrel with an old rope scar above the knee and a broken forelock. Another code matched. The pattern widened. KD-14 had not stood alone. Neither had Wren and Finch. Graham Pritchard arrived before the sheriff finished. He came with 2 riders and no sign of haste. "You have entered leased ground without permission," he said. "I entered after observing animals reported missing," the sheriff replied. "The identified horses remain here under watch until the October 17th examination." Pritchard looked at Harriet. "You have gathered half the valley and pointed at every common scar until someone agrees with you." Harriet held up the breeding book. 3 coded horses named on your missing ledger leaf stand in this pasture. 2 answer to Kestrel Draw records. The others answer to theirs. A page stolen by a disgraced hand. "The original is sealed at Conejos," the sheriff said. "Its condition was witnessed." Pritchard's gaze cut toward Owen. "And you think this restores your name?" Owen remained mounted. "I am here to tell what I saw." "You saw a book you did not understand." "I understood run iron." Pritchard's pleasant expression narrowed. "You signed no complaint when you left." "I should have." Owen's voice stayed plain. "That failure belongs to me. The horses do not." Harriet felt the words settle where apology alone had not reached. He had admitted the worst part before men whose opinion could cost him work. He had not done it to win her back. He had done it because the record required it. The sheriff assigned a deputy from the road party to remain at the pasture until formal direction came from Conejos. He did not return the mares to Harriet that day. She disliked leaving them, but she understood the purpose. Pritchard could no longer claim she removed animals before examination. As Harriet mounted, Pritchard stepped close enough to speak without raising his voice. 5 days until Conejos, he said. Your records will not save a ranch no buyer will touch. Harriet settled her boot in the stirrup. Then, you had better hope your records are cleaner than mine. They reached Kestrel Draw near dusk. A telegram waited beneath the office latch. Harriet recognized the freight buyer's name before opening it. Order withdrawn until ownership. Examination stop will observe Alamosa exhibition before final decision. The order was gone. The door was not entirely closed. Harriet folded the telegram and placed it on the desk. How long until the bank's deadline? Owen asked from the open doorway. 10 days. And the examination? 5. What do you need from me? The old answer would have been everything. Harriet had learned that the word was too large to protect anyone. Every fact you have not yet given me. Owen removed his hat. Ask, did you know coded horses entered through the east gate before you saw Banner? Yes. Did you know KD-14 was connected to that gate? Yes. I did not know the horse's name or ranch until you opened the breeding book. Did you know KD-22 and 23 belonged to Kestrel Draw? No. Did you know Pritchard intended to use the mares at the hearing? No. I inferred it from how they were moved. Did anyone order you to stay silent after you left? No. Then why did you? Owen's right hand tightened around the hat brim. Because Pritchard had money, contracts, and men willing to repeat his version. I had a stolen page and a name he had already damaged. I told myself I was waiting until the proof could survive him. You were also waiting until it could save you. Yes, no delay. Harriet stepped closer to the desk. And when you came here, Wanted to know whether you would use the page honestly. You tested me without telling me I was being tested. Yes. You decided I had to prove myself to a man I had hired. Yes. His acceptance did not excuse the insult. It made it possible to name. That will not happen again. No evidence in your coat. No decisions made for my protection. No useful truth after I discover half of it myself. Agreed. Do not agree because you want back into my good opinion. Owen's voice lowered. I agree because you were right to throw me out. Harriet looked at the telegram, the 5-day hearing date, and the man who had finally stopped polishing fear into caution. She walked to the hitching rail between them and held out her hand. Owen did not take it. You're sure? He asked. No, Harriet said, but I am choosing. He placed his right hand in hers. His fingers closed only after hers did. The contact was warm, steady, and free of claim. Not forgiveness complete, not yet. Harriet tightened her grip once. Ride beside me, she said. Owen's eyes moved toward the telegram. Where? To Alamosa. The buyer will observe the exhibition before Conejos. Banner will show what he remembers, and I will show only what his body can safely give. And the hearing, we gather witnesses before Pritchard controls the room. Owen nodded. Beside you. Harriet released his hand when she was ready. 5 days remained before receipt books, brands, horses, and one forged story would have to stand together. 5 days before the hearing, Harriet stopped trying to prove everything at once. Banner did not need to carry the theft, the altered brand, the banknote, and every man's opinion on his back. He needed to walk the pattern his body remembered and stop before memory became pain. The farrier returned to Kestrel Draw on October 13th and examined the cracked right forehoof under full daylight. No heat, no swelling. The edge held. Banner gave the foot more freely than he had 2 weeks earlier. One short demonstration, the farrier said. Soft ground, walk only. No sharp turn, no saddle tree. If his stride shortens, you stop. Harriet repeated each limit while Tom wrote it in the ranch daybook. Owen stood outside the stable doorway, his left shoulder still stiff beneath his coat. He did not offer to improve the plan. What do you want from me? He asked. Watch the gate from outside the rail. Say something only if you see pain before I do. And if Pritchard enters the ring, you stay out unless I call you. Owen's jaw tightened, but he nodded, understood. They prepared Banner in brief sessions over the next 2 days. Harriet used the repaired red rawhide halter and a folded pad, never the damaged saddle locked in the tack room. She asked for the left bend once, the right circle once, and the 4-beat walk down a straight line. Owen observed without taking the lead. When Banner shortened his right step, Harriet ended the work before Owen could warn her. He noticed that too. On the morning of October 15th, they rode the 14 miles to Alamosa beneath a hard grey sky. Banner travelled untacked beside Harriet's sorrel, led by Tom at a walk over the softer edge of the road. Owen rode on Harriet's right, favouring his injured shoulder and keeping the reins low. No one mentioned the hearing, waiting 2 days south at Conejos. The date rode with them anyway. The exhibition ring had been built beyond the livery, a broad oval of packed dirt bordered by rough rails. Freight buyers, ranchers, farriers, and teamsters had gathered before noon. Pritchard's horses stood near the far side in polished tack, each handled by a rider wearing the same dark badge on his saddle skirt. Banner looked plain among them. Dark bay coat, repaired halter, no decoration. The freight buyer, who had withdrawn from Kestrel Draw, stood beside the sheriff with his hat tucked beneath one arm. I came to observe, he told Harriet, not to commit. Then observe what is shown, she said, not what anyone says it must mean. Pritchard waited at the gate in a black coat. This horse is under ownership dispute. The complaint forbids sale, removal from Conejos County, and rebranding, Harriet said. It does not forbid a short demonstration before witnesses. The sheriff unfolded his copy of the notice. She is correct. The examination remains October 17th at Conejos. Today settles nothing. Then this is theatre, Pritchard said. No, Harriet answered. It is a horse walking. She entered the ring alone with Banner. Owen stopped outside the rail where she had placed him. Harriet first showed the physical marks already recorded in the breeding book. White hair at the left heel, crescent scar beneath the jaw, older kestrel lines beneath the overburn. She did not claim the marks proved theft. She stated only that they matched an entry written 11 years earlier. The freight buyer examined the heel from the rail. A former farrier leaned closer when Harriet named the jaw scar. Pritchard folded his arms. A scar can be described after a horse is found. Yes, Harriet said. That is why the record contains more than a scar. She led Banner down the long side of the ring. His stride began guarded, then settled into the smooth 4-beat rhythm her father had recorded. At the first corner, Harriet asked for the left bend. Banner followed easily. On the right, his neck stiffened and his step shortened. Harriet widened the turn before pain could grow. Owen remained outside the rail. She saw his hands flex once at his sides. He did not interfere. At the center, Harriet halted and let the lead hang slack. She walked 10 paces away. Wind lifted Banner's mane. The crowd murmured. Harriet gave the 2-note whistle. Banner raised his head, crossed the ring, and stopped before her without the rope tightening. The former farrier spoke first. I shod a kestrel bay that traveled like that. Pritchard answered before the man could continue. Many horses answer a whistle, and many papers can carry a false name, Harriet said. That is why the horse, the records, and the witnesses must stand together. She reached up and touched Banner beneath the jaw. His breathing remained even. The demonstration was finished. She did not ask him for another circle. That restraint carried farther than any flourish could have. The freight buyer nodded once, not approval. Recognition. Pritchard moved toward the gate. You have taught a damaged animal a trick and called it memory. He lifted the latch. Owen shifted one step, then stopped. Harriet met his eyes across the rail. Stand with me. Owen entered the ring. He did not take Banner's lead. He placed himself at Harriet's right side, his injured shoulder turned away from the horse. His hands remained open. The sheriff took the gate from Pritchard before he could push through. You remain outside unless invited. Pritchard laughed once. There, the woman, the disgraced hand, and the horse they have polished into a claim. Owen's voice stayed plain. She did not need me to teach him who he was, but she needed your stolen page. She needed what was written on it. And if what was written elsewhere proves Elias Lyle sold me the gelding. Harriet felt the air alter before she saw the paper. Pritchard reached inside his coat and drew out a folded document bearing a notary's mark and what appeared to be her father's signature. Bill of sale, he said. Dark Bay gelding, Kestrel Draw Code 14. Purchased from Elias Lyle before his death. The sheriff took the paper only after asking Pritchard to hold it by one corner. Harriet did not move toward it until the sheriff unfolded it against the gate rail. The ranch name was correct. KD 14 was written in the body. The date stood 2 weeks before Banner disappeared. Her father's signature resembled the narrow upward hand she knew from tax receipts and sale papers. Beneath it, sat a numbered receipt, 246. Harriet felt recognition before certainty. That number belonged elsewhere. She had seen it beside a grey mare sold years before Banner vanished. Pritchard watched her face. You accuse men because you did not know your own father's business. Shame invited haste. Fear invited denial. Harriet chose neither. Seal it, she told the sheriff. It must be compared with the bound counterfoil at Conejos. Pritchard's smile weakened. Barely. Enough. The sheriff described the paper aloud before two witnesses, folded it along its existing creases, wrapped it in plain paper, tied the packet with cord, and pressed wax over the knot. The freight buyer and livery owner signed across the fold. The hearing is already set, the sheriff said. This goes before the county judge with the other records. You concede the sale? Pritchard asked. Harriet held Banner's lead in one hand. I concede that paper exists, nothing more. The exhibition ended without verdict. Harriet returned the breeding book to her leather satchel and kept it tied behind her own saddle for the ride south the next morning. They left Alamosa on October 16th in a hired wagon with the sheriff, while Owen, Tom, and the livery owner rode beside them. Banner remained at Kestrel Draw, under the written care limits already entered in the ranch daybook. The journey to Conejos consumed most of the daylight. Wind pressed dust against the wagon boards, and Owen's left shoulder stiffened with each mile, but he made no complaint. Harriet reviewed the receipt sequence from memory and refused to turn memory into fact until the book could answer. At the Conejos County Clerk's office, the original torn ledger leaf was already held under the sheriff's earlier seal. Tom's copied code envelope had been entered beside it. The clerk received Pritchard's forged bill from the sheriff and wrote the date, hour, and names of those present into his book. Harriet then placed the Kestrel Draw breeding book and Ezra Pike's telegram on the counter. These remain mine, she said. They may be held for tomorrow's examination. But I want a written receipt. The clerk wrote one, naming both objects and their condition. Harriet read it before signing. The livery owner kept his consignment book in his possession, but the clerk entered that he had brought it and would produce it at the hearing. Only after every object had a named keeper did Harriet step away from the counter. She and Owen lodged separately in rooms above a boarding house near the courthouse. At the foot of the stairs, Owen paused. You know the receipt number. I remember it. From what? Harriet rested one hand on the satchel now empty of the breeding book. A grey mare my father sold 3 years before Banner disappeared. You are certain? No. She looked toward the clerk's locked office across the street. Tomorrow, the paper will tell us whether memory is right, or whether Pritchard has found the one record capable of taking Kestrel Draw from me. Receipt number 246 could save Kestrel Draw or prove Harriet had accused the wrong man. By 9 the next morning, the Conejos County Clerk had placed Pritchard's sealed bill of sale beside the brown leather breeding book on the judge's table. The original torn ledger leaf remained wrapped under the sheriff's seal. Owen's copied list lay in the envelope Tom had delivered days earlier. Ezra Pike's telegram rested beneath the clerk's written receipt. Every object had a named keeper. Every hand that moved one was observed. Graham Pritchard sat across the room beside an attorney from Pueblo, his black coat brushed clean of road dust. Harriet stood at the opposite table with Owen behind her right shoulder. He did not touch the records. He did not speak before he was called. His left arm remained close to his body, the shoulder stiff after the journey south. The county judge opened the scheduled ownership examination by reading the complaint Pritchard had filed against Harriet. Then he asked the clerk to break the wax on the forged bill's packet and describe its condition. "Mr. Pritchard," the judge said, "you claim Elias Lyle sold you the Dark Bay gelding identified as KD-14 before the animal disappeared." "I do. And you offer this paper as proof." "It is proof." Pritchard's attorney rose. "Miss Lyle's case rests on family records she has controlled since her father's death, and a ledger page stolen by a disgraced employee." Harriet kept both hands flat on the table, then let the records answer in the order they were written. The judge nodded. "Proceed." The clerk opened the breeding book to the numbered sale counterfoils. Harriet did not reach for it. "Read the number on Mr. Pritchard's document," she said. 246, the clerk replied. "Now find the bound counterfoil carrying that number." Paper moved beneath his fingers. The room held its breath without needing anyone to announce the silence. The clerk stopped. "Receipt 246 records a grey mare, 6 years old, white blaze, dark forelegs, sold to Matthew Kern for $75. Pritchard's attorney stood. "A reused number is no evidence of forgery." "Then examine the sequence," Harriet said. The clerk turned the pages before and after the entry. 245, 246, 247. No gaps, no duplicates. "My father did not reuse sale numbers," Harriet said. "The bound book runs in order from 201 through 283. The judge inspected the stitching, the ink, and the surrounding entries. "Mr. Pritchard's document carries a number already assigned 3 years earlier to another animal." "A clerical mistake," Pritchard said. Harriet faced him. "A mistake that gives Banner the receipt of a grey mare." The judge did not declare victory. He looked toward the clerk. "Continue." Ezra Pike's telegram came next. The clerk read that KD-14 carried the Clear Kestrel brand on September 3, 1888, and vanished 2 days later. The sheriff testified that when he inspected Banner at Kestrel Draw, a later iron had been laid over an older mark. Harriet then asked for the torn ledger leaf. The clerk opened its wrapper after the sheriff identified the seals. KD-14, run iron. KD-22, KD-23, cash notation. Pritchard's attorney turned toward Owen. "You took this from my client's book?" "Yes." "Without permission?" "Yes." "And kept it for months?" "Yes." "You concealed it from Miss Lyle?" "Yes." The admissions moved through the room like blows. Owen refused to dodge. "Because you intended to use it when profitable." "Because I was afraid my word would fail against Mr. Pritchard's money and contracts. Yet now you expect it to stand." Owen's voice remained level, not alone. "It stands beside the brands, the horses, the bound records, the telegram, and the men who saw them." The attorney lifted Owen's copied list. "And this, my memory of codes written on the adjoining pages, another paper you concealed." "Yes." Owen looked toward the judge, not Harriet. "I told myself I was protecting evidence. I was also protecting myself. I tested Miss Lyle's honesty without her knowledge and let her risk her ranch without the full truth. She dismissed me. She was right." Harriet felt the words enter places an apology in private had not reached. He was not asking the court to restore his name. He was making his failure part of the same record that might condemn Pritchard. The clerk read KD-22 and KD-23 from the copied list. The sheriff testified that Wren and Finch, mares carrying those codes in Harriet's breeding book, had been found in Pritchard's leased pasture. Amos Dillard and Seth Corbin each described one coded horse matching their own older records. Neither claimed more than he knew. One identified a split ear and white girth mark. The other identified a rope scar and broken forelock. The pattern did not depend on perfect memory. It depended on separate facts agreeing. Pritchard leaned back. Common markings, a stolen page, a woman's private book. Nothing proves I took Banner. No single piece does, Harriet said. That is why each lie was kept apart. She asked the livery owner to produce his consignment book. He opened to Banner's entry. A man calling himself Dobb had paid cash for 2 weeks' keep and instructed the livery to sell the gelding before inspection season. Would you recognize him? The judge asked. The livery owner scanned the room. His attention stopped near the rear wall, where one of Pritchard's riders stood with his hat pulled low. A pale scar crossed one eyebrow. That is the man, the owner said. The rider stepped toward the door. The sheriff moved into his path. Stay where you are. Pritchard's attorney objected that an alias proved nothing about ownership. Harriet agreed. Not alone. She pointed to the cash amount in the livery book, then the notation beside KD 14 on the ledger leaf. The figures matched. The alias links the gelding's arrival in Alamosa to the same amount recorded beside the order to run an iron. Pritchard stood. This is a construction built by a desperate woman. Then let us remove what cannot carry weight, Harriet said. She asked the judge's permission to mention the damaged saddle. 2 rawhide shims were found beneath its lining. They explain Banner's pain and his resistance under saddle. They do not prove who placed them there. I am not offering them as proof against Mr. Pritchard. The admission caused more reaction than an accusation might have. Harriet did not turn toward the room. I will not strengthen my claim by pretending uncertainty is fact. The judge regarded her for a long beat. Noted. Pritchard's control finally cracked. Elias Lyle owed me. Then you had the right to file a debt, Harriet said. He promised stock. Then you had the right to demand a lawful bill of sale. She indicated receipt 246. Debt did not give you the right to borrow another horse's number, alter a brand, or move kestrel animals through an alias. Pritchard stepped toward the evidence table. The sheriff blocked him. Sit down. Those are my records. They are in the clerk's keeping. Pritchard reached past him. The sheriff caught his wrist and turned him away without striking him. At the rear of the room, the Scarborough rider tried the door again. A deputy stopped him. The judge called the room to order, then delivered a narrow ruling. Pritchard's immediate title claim to Banner was rejected. Banner would remain with Harriet. Wren, Finch, and other clearly identified horses could be returned as their claims were entered. The forged bill, torn ledger leaf, copied codes, consignment entry, and witness statements would be forwarded with complaints concerning forgery, horse theft, intimidation, and altered brands. Pritchard was not convicted that morning. He was placed in the sheriff's custody, pending further proceedings, because he had attempted to interfere with evidence, and witnesses had described efforts to purchase false testimony. Harriet accepted the limit. Lawful consequence did not need to become spectacle to be real. Outside the courthouse, the freight buyer approached with a folded order. I withdrew because I would not purchase disputed stock, he said. I know. I still will not buy Banner. He is not for sale. Good. He handed her the paper. 6 kestrel horses after individual inspection. A bank draft in advance sufficient to answer the overdue installment and purchase winter feed. Harriet read the terms. No horse is pushed beyond sound work. Agreed. I may reject any rider you send. Agreed. The draft goes through the Alamosa Bank, not into my hand here. The buyer nodded. Agreed. Owen waited near the Conejos livery while Harriet signed. When the buyer left, Owen put on his hat. My part is finished. The mares are not home. They will be when the clerk enters the return. And you? I will ride back to Alamosa tomorrow. Your bank danger is answered. You do not need me for Banner, the hearing, or the evidence. Harriet stepped closer. He did not use victory to ask for a place. He was giving her the freedom he had once withheld. She caught his sleeve with one hand. Owen stopped immediately. Harriet wrapped both arms around his waist, mindful of his injured shoulder. His right arm remained at his side until she tightened her hold. Then it came around her back. Solid, warm, chosen. Harriet lifted her face. Owen paused above her mouth, still asking without words. Don't stop this time, she said. He kissed her with the restraint he had practiced and the feeling he had earned the right to show. Harriet answered, one hand rising to the back of his neck. The kiss deepened without haste and ended because they both chose to breathe. Owen rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, he asked, ride back with me. Beside you? Harriet's tightened once against his coat. Beside me. They rode north together the next morning, but not before Harriet returned to the Conejos County clerk's office and collected the breeding book and Ezra Pike's telegram against a written entry recording their release. The original ledger leaf, Owen's copied codes, Pritchard's bill of sale, and the copied consignment entry remained in the clerk's keeping for the later proceedings. Harriet checked each description before signing her name. Owen waited near the door with his hat in his right hand and his injured left shoulder held still beneath his coat. He did not ask whether she trusted the clerk. He watched her make certain no record moved without a name attached. By mid-morning, the boarding house keeper had packed bread, cheese, and apples for the road. Harriet and Owen left Conejos with Tom and the livery owner, while the sheriff remained behind to arrange the return of the identified horses and question the scar-browed rider who had called himself Dob. The freight buyer's conditional order rested inside Harriet's leather satchel. The bank draft was pinned beneath it. Neither paper meant Kestrel drawer was saved yet. Paper had to travel. Money had to be entered. The bank had to accept it before the 35 days ended. Their first day north passed under a cold wind that pushed dust along the road in pale sheets. Owen rode beside Harriet, not because she needed protection from the open country, but because she had asked him there. He favored his left arm when mounting and dismounted from a block at the night stop. Harriet noticed without turning the injury into an excuse to command him. Can you manage another day? She asked. Yes, that is not the same as saying it does not hurt. It hurts. And I can manage another day. Harriet nodded. Then we leave after first light, not before. Owen accepted the limit. They shared supper at opposite ends of a rough table with Tom and the livery owner between them. No one mentioned the kiss near the courthouse. Its reality did not require public witness. On October 19th, they reached Alamosa, late enough that the bank had closed. Harriet stood outside the darkened door with the bank draft inside her coat and felt one full day settle onto her shoulders. 2 days remained. We can be here when the clerk opens, Owen said. I know. You have the buyer's signature, the amount, and the order terms. I know that too. He did not offer comfort, as if listing facts could remove fear. He only stood beside her while she looked at the locked bank. She asked. Above the livery, she asked. Your old room? If it is still open. Harriet adjusted the strap of her satchel. Meet me here at 8. Do you want me inside? Yes. The answer came without bargaining. The next morning, The bank clerk read the freight order twice and examined the draft beneath the window light. He asked whether title to the 6 horses was clear. Harriet produced no speech. She gave him the order, the hearing entry rejecting Pritchard's immediate claim to Banner, and the buyer's condition that each animal be inspected separately. "Banner is not included," she said. "Neither are Wren nor Finch until their return is entered and their possession restored." The clerk adjusted his spectacles. "This draft covers the overdue installment and leaves a balance. The balance remains in the Kestrel drawer account for feed and inspection costs. You do not want cash. I want the note marked current." Owen stood near the door. He did not step forward when the clerk asked whether he was Harriet's partner. Harriet answered before anyone else could. "He is not listed on the note." The clerk looked at Owen. "And you have no claim against the ranch?" "None," Owen said. "My wages were settled." The clerk wrote the payment into the bank book, stamped the receipt, and drew a line through the overdue notation. The mortgage did not disappear. Kestrel drawer remained pledged until the full debt was paid. But the bank had no present cause to shorten Harriet's choices. She held the receipt between 2 fingers and read the date, October 20th. One day before the deadline, relief did not arrive as triumph. It loosened the muscles along her back one at a time. Owen watched her fold the receipt. "Current?" he asked. "Current. Good." Harriet placed it inside the satchel beside the breeding book and the buyer's order. "We ride home today. Your shoulder," Tom asked Owen, "will survive 14 miles. Harriet looked at him. "At a walk." Owen's mouth almost curved. "At a walk." Kestrel drawer came into view near dusk. Banner called from the corral. When Harriet gave the 2-note whistle, Tom had ridden ahead the previous evening with instructions for the ranch, and the place stood in order. Repaired fence tight, stalls clean, no new tracks near the north pasture. Wren and Finch had not yet been returned, but a rider carried notice from the sheriff waited beneath the office latch. Their transfer would be completed within 3 days after. The clerk entered Harriet's claim. Harriet placed the breeding book back in the locked lower drawer. Ezra's telegram went beside the legal papers. The bank receipt joined the original livery bill, work agreement, Owen's witness statement, and $50 tag in the top drawer. Every object returned to a named place. Owen remained outside the office. "The 5 weeks end tomorrow," he said. Harriet turned from the desk. "Yes, your installment is paid." "Yes, the hearing is finished. The ownership examination is finished. Pritchard's other proceedings are not. You do not need me for those." "No." The word sat plainly between them. Owen put on his hat. "Then I will take the west road in the morning." Harriet had imagined this moment through every mile from Conejos. In some versions, she asked him to remain, because the ranch needed his hands. In others, she let him go, because wanting him felt too much like weakness. Both answers were false. She closed the office drawer. "Come back at 8 tomorrow." Owen studied her. "For what?" "To ask what I need." "You know already?" "I know what I do not need." "All right." He went to the bunkhouse for one final night under the expired agreement. The next morning, Owen arrived at the office at 8. Not earlier, when he might catch her unprepared. Not later, when delay could become pressure. Harriet had placed 2 copies of a new agreement on her father's desk. The office door stood open. Banner grazed in the training corral beyond the window. "You told me to ask," Owen said. "Ask. What do you need?" Harriet rested her fingertips on the papers. "I do not need a rescuer. I do not need a man to marry me so a bank sees his name. I do not need someone to own Kestrel. draw through debt, wages, gratitude, or affection. I know. I do not need truth delivered after you decide I can bear it. His face tightened. You should not accept that again. Do you have any paper, name, threat, promise, payment, or fact still concealed? No. Any plan you have made for my protection without telling me? No. Any arrangement with the sheriff, clerk, buyer, or livery owner that I do not know? No. Any intention to leave because you believed departure would be noble? Owen's right hand closed against his hat brim. I considered it. That was not what I asked. No intention. Harriet slid one agreement toward him. 6 months. Horse rehabilitation and training. Wages plus a share of profit from animals accepted into the program. Kestrel. Draw land and existing stock. Remain mine. Neither of us sells, breeds, transfers, or promises a program horse without both signatures. Original records remain in this office. If one leaves the ranch, its destination, carrier, and purpose are written down. Either of us may end the agreement after 6 months without penalty. Owen read the page slowly. Room in the bunkhouse. Included, not required. Courtship and marriage create no work obligation. That line stays. I did not ask to remove it. He read the final provision twice. You built my wrong into the business. I built the correction into it. Fair. Harriet moved around the desk until nothing stood between them. Do you want the work? Yes. Do you want it only because it keeps you near me? No. I want the work because it matters. I want to stay near you because you matter. Her pulse beat high beneath her collar. Owen did not close the distance. He left it for her. Harriet touched the front of his coat over the inner pocket, where the ledger page had once rested. The cloth lay flat beneath her palm. I bought your labor because Banner needed help, she said. I respected you because you saw pain before vice. I trusted you because your hands stopped when they were no longer needed. Owen's breathing slowed. Then you broke that trust. Yes, you repaired what you could without demanding reward. You told the truth where it cost you work and reputation. You obeyed me when disobedience might have made you look brave. Her fingers tightened against his coat. You mattered before the hearing. You matter now that the bank is paid and I can afford to let you leave. Owen raised his right hand and stopped beside her face. May I? Harriet leaned into his palm. Yes, his thumb rested along her cheek. Warm, motionless, waiting. Harriet refused to hide the most important truth inside implication. I love you, she said. Owen closed his eyes once. When he opened them, the guarded distance was gone. I love you too. His voice roughened. Not because you gave me work. Not because you opened the gate again. I love the way you keep a man's wages honest when you have reason to hate him. I love the way you refuse a claim you cannot prove, even when it would help you win. I love that you asked Banner what he could bear, before you asked what he could show. Harriet's mouth lifted. That is a long speech for you. I have been correcting a bad habit. Then continue. She kissed him first. Owen's hand remained at her cheek until Harriet stepped nearer. Only then did his right arm circle her waist. The kiss held no debt, no urgency, and no unfinished argument. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. Will you marry me? He asked. Harriet did not answer from relief, danger, or fear of losing him. She answered from the life standing open beyond the office door. Not to save Kestrel Draw. No, not because you need land. No, not because I need your name on the bank paper. Never. Then yes, after the winter inspection. Owen exhaled against her temple. Yes, yes. She stepped back and handed him the pen. Owen read every line once more before signing both copies. Harriet signed beneath him and dated them October 21st, 1888. One copy went into the locked office drawer. The other she gave to Owen. He folded it and placed it in the outer breast pocket where the edge remained visible. They walked to the corral. Banner approached at Harriet's whistle. She opened the gate and placed the lead rope in Owen's right hand. "Tomorrow we begin the work," she said. "And today—" Harriet threaded her fingers through his free hand. "Today you stay because I asked." Owen closed his hand around hers. "Today I stay because I choose you." By June, the south gate at Kestrel Draw no longer looked like the boundary of a place waiting to be taken. New posts stood where the fence had been cut the previous autumn, their pale wood already darkening beneath sun and weather. Wren and finch, grazed beyond the enclosed spring, returned after the county clerk entered Harriet's claim, and the sheriff completed the transfer. Banner moved among the younger horses in the training pasture, sound enough for light work, and never again asked to prove his worth through pain. Harriet watched him from the office porch while Owen worked with a nervous sorrel colt at the far end of the corral. He did not pull when the colt leaned away. He lowered the rope, changed his angle, and waited. The colt took one uncertain step. Owen gave him more room. 6 months earlier, Harriet would have watched for skill. Now she watched for consistency. It remained. "He is guarding your left side," she called. Owen shifted 2 feet to the right. The colt's head lowered. "Better?" he asked. "You know it is. I prefer hearing you admit it." Harriet smiled and returned to the ledger open across her knees. The rehabilitation program had accepted 9 horses since winter. 4 had returned to useful ranch work. 2 had been placed with teamsters who understood their limits. 1 would never be ridden again, but had found a quiet home with a widow who needed a gentle animal to accompany her milk cow across the pasture. The last 2 still required time. None of it had made Kestrel Draw rich. Feed remained expensive. A spring windstorm had taken shingles from the bunkhouse roof. The banknote was current, not erased. Yet each month ended with figures Harriet could defend. Every program horse had a record. Every transfer required 2 signatures. Every original paper remained in the office unless its destination, carrier, and purpose were written down. At the end of April, when the 6-month agreement expired, Harriet and Owen had read every provision again at the same open desk where they first signed it. They renewed the partnership for 1 year. Kestrel Draw, land, and existing stock remained Harriet's. Owen retained wages and profit share. Either could leave the business under the written terms. Marriage changed none of it. They adjusted only the number of horses the program could accept before winter. Owen had suggested fewer. Harriet had agreed after checking the feed ledger twice. Their wedding had taken place in March after the winter inspection, with Tom Mercer, the sheriff, and the Conejos County clerk as witnesses. Harriet wore a plain band. Owen's matched it. No land changed hands. No debt vanished. No promise was made that love would turn difficult seasons easy. They married because both were free to refuse, and neither did. Owen entered the office carrying the repaired red rawhide halter. The brass buckle caught the morning light. "Banner does not need this today," he said. "He may never need it again." Harriet closed the ledger. "Hang it by the training gate." "You sure?" "Yes." He paused beside the desk. On the wall above it hung the old square tag Harriet had removed from Banner's halter after buying him in Alamosa. The paper had faded at the edges. Beneath the original $50 figure, Harriet had written 5 words in dark ink. Worth was never the price. Owen touched neither the tag nor the ledger. That restraint had become so natural, she sometimes forgot how deliberately he had built it. "The buyer from Lahara arrived," he said. "He wants to see the two sorrels." "Did he inspect their feet before asking the price?" "No." "Then he can wait for the farrier." Owen leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. The bruise from autumn had healed, though the left side stiffened after long work. He offered cash. "Cash does not improve a hoof. I told him you would say that." Harriet raised one eyebrow. Owen caught the warning and corrected himself. "I told him I expected you would say it. Then I told him he could hear the answer from you." "Better. I have had practice." He crossed the room and bent to kiss her temple. The touch was easy now, familiar, still chosen. Harriet rested one hand against his forearm before he straightened. News of Graham Pritchard had reached Kestrel Draw by stages through winter and spring. The forged bill, altered brands, ledger entries, livery record, and testimony from several ranchers had held together through later proceedings. Pritchard was convicted on charges tied to stolen horses and fraudulent papers. Restitution was ordered where ownership could be proved. Some animals were never found. Some losses could not be repaired by a verdict or money. Harriet refused to call justice complete, merely because it had become official. Yet Pritchard no longer controlled buyer access across the valley. His contracts had passed to other men. Each time Owen completed honest work for a rancher who had once believed Pritchard's story, another piece of his reputation returned. Not dramatically, reliably, the buyer appeared at the porch with his hat in hand. He was broad through the middle and carried the cheerful impatience of a man accustomed to purchasing before anyone could object. "Mrs. Maddox," he said. Harriet rose. "Harriet Maddox, when the full name is needed. Harriet will do." The buyer glanced toward Owen. "And which of you sets the price?" "We each price the work we know," Harriet said. "The final sale requires both signatures. Complicated arrangement, only for men accustomed to one person owning every answer." Owen coughed into his fist. Harriet knew he was hiding a laugh. They walked to the training corral. Banner stood near the gate without a halter, watching the younger horses move around him. His dark coat had regained its depth. The altered brand remained visible beneath the hair. Harriet had chosen not to burn it again. Another iron would not improve the truth. The scar told what had been done. The buyer studied him. "That the gelding everyone talked about last fall? It is. Worth something now, I suppose." Harriet rested her forearms on the rail. "He was worth something then." The man considered that, then pointed toward Owen. "Does the trainer come with every difficult horse?" Owen glanced at Harriet. The old livery joke stood between them without power now. Once she had turned boldness into a bargain and nearly reduced a man to part of the purchase. He had corrected her. She had listened. Owen answered the buyer. "No, sir, I stayed." The buyer looked from him to Harriet and wisely returned his attention to the sorrels. The farrier arrived before noon. Harriet led the inspection. The younger sorrel had improved but still favored one front foot after long circles. The buyer wanted him ready for freight work by July. "No," Harriet said. "He needs another season. I will pay $10 more. $10 will not shorten healing." The buyer looked to Owen. "Your opinion? She is right. You did not examine him. I watched him every morning for 6 weeks." Owen rested both hands on the rail. "He is better. He is not ready." The older sorrel passed inspection. Harriet demonstrated his handling. Owen described the training record, then stepped back while she negotiated terms. The buyer signed both copies at the office. Harriet and Owen signed beneath him. One copy went with the buyer. The other entered the locked drawer beside the bank receipt. Livery bill, renewed partnership agreement, and Owen's first witness statement. The original torn ledger leaf, copied codes, and Pritchard's forged bill remained with the county records after the proceedings. Ezra Pike's telegram and the breeding book had returned to Kestrel drawer. The damaged saddle still rested untouched in the locked tack room. It had proved Banner's pain. Harriet had never used it to accuse a man she could not connect to the shims. One honest sale, Owen said when the buyer rode away. One sound horse, Harriet replied. One difficult woman. Harriet closed the drawer. Careful. I was going to say one difficult woman who was right. That is better. They crossed the yard together. Owen hung the red rawhide halter on the new training gate post, where the repaired buckle shone against weathered wood. Banner raised his head at the sound. Harriet gave the two-note whistle. He came at a walk and stopped on the other side of the gate. Owen lifted the latch, then waited. Harriet passed through first because she chose to. He followed because he chose to. When the work was finished, they closed the gate together. Banner stood behind them in the June light, calm and unrestrained. Owen slipped his arm around Harriet's waist. She leaned into him and turned her face for the kiss he placed against her temple. Neither held the other's reins. Neither needed to.